Okay, sorry for the delay. Welcome back, everyone. How y'all doing today? Good week so far. Lots of midterms. Just yeah. Okay. So today, going to be giving a workshop on introductory Python programming. This was inspired by the fact that in our last workshop about machine learning, a lot of you seemed really lost, understandably, because I realized after the fact that most of you probably have not written that much Python before, so maybe it's a little confusing. So I'm just gonna go back to the basics and try to show you guys how Python works in general. So if you've done Python before, this will be a great refresher for you. And if not, this will be a good first introduction. Uh, so I recommend you guys follow along on your laptops. We're going to be going through a little sample code together. I promise it'll be a little more organized than last time. Uh, Also, thanks to everyone who came to the welcome event last week and got some pizza. And who here went to that event? Awesome. So like a lot of you. So yeah, welcome back to everyone who has been here in the past, and welcome to everyone who's new here. Yeah, who's ready for Python? Cool. Okay. First of all, I sent out an announcement yesterday in the Discord that has a link to a Colab document. Has anyone had the chance to look at that yet? Okay, that's fine if you haven't. We're going to be working on that later. So just, is anyone here not in the Discord? Because you're going to need to be in the Discord to get the code for today. Anyone? Okay, perfect. So then I'll just get started. I'm just going to give a brief introduction to what Python is, how it differs from other programming languages that you might be more familiar with, and then we're just going to jump right into coding. So a question that people might ask themselves is, why Python? Why should we use this? Why should we learn it? Well, there's a lot of answers to that. First of all, it's one of the most commonly used languages in the world. In a survey, 51% of people who are developers use Python on a regular basis. That's now the third largest language in the world. And it's really useful for a lot of things, data science, machine learning, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's a really good thing to know. It's really kind of the engine that's running the future of computing. So all the sorts of modern computing are done in Python. Like ChatGPT, for example, a lot of that is written in Python. So it's a good skill to have, a good thing for resumes, especially because they don't really teach it that much in school. So it's good to have that experience of having multiple languages you can work with. So that's the question. To answer the question of why is Python a good language to learn, but now we need to figure out what actually is Python. So Python is a programming language that is considered procedural and functional. And basically, those words just mean that your code kind of just runs line by line, and instructions kind of just work almost independently. So this is as opposed to object-oriented programming. So by show of hands, who here has written anything in C++ or Java or anything? Okay, so most of you. Yeah, so CS 115, 160, those are like the intro to CS courses. Those are based on Java. If you took it at community college, you made it on C++, but those are object-oriented, meaning that the whole language involves defining classes with methods inside that can run sort of as objects. In Python, you can do object-oriented programming, but usually you don't. Usually you just write lines of instructions called scripts that just run from top to bottom and do everything that you ask. Yeah, so another thing that differentiates Python from other languages is that instead of using methods, which are things that belong to a class, we use functions, which are just blocks of code that you can define, call again later. So it looks exactly like methods that you've seen in Java. It's just that they're not attached to an object or a class. And also, Python is not a compiled language. Java is both compiled and interpreted, depending on how you look at it. Many big languages are compiled. That actually makes Python slower because it's interpreted, meaning that it kind of goes line by line when running. However, that does have some advantages because it makes the code just a lot more flexible, a lot more readable. So, yeah, there's a lot of useful things you can do kind of on a high level in Python without having to know too much about what's going on the actual processor. So that makes it really useful. So there's just a little chart comparing Python to Java. As I said, Python's a lot more concise. It's a lot cleaner. It's a lot more readable. So you can accomplish many of the same tasks as in Java, but with much fewer lines. It's interpreted, it's relatively slow, but in the long run, for most applications, that doesn't really make a difference because you're talking about something that takes 1 millisecond to run versus 3 milliseconds. I mean, no one knows the difference, right? So another thing is that Python's actually considered easier to learn just because the structure kind of flows more like English sentences rather than like weird constructs of programming. It's dynamically typed, which is something that trips up a lot of people. Just who here knows the difference between static and dynamic typing? We got one person. You want to?
So you can like if you define like a variable, you can override it with a different type, data type, and will just force it to be the new data type.
Yeah, exactly. So in Python, since we have dynamically typed variables, that means that you don't specify the type of variable. So in Java, you have to define things as an integer or double or string or whatever, and then that variable is stuck. It has to stay on that variable type, and you can't try to change it. So if you have like an integer value and you try to set it to like 7.5, which is a float, then it'll give you an error. Uh, or actually, I think it might just round off the decimal in Java. But yeah, so that in Java, it's statically typed because a variable is stuck to a certain variable type once you define it. But in Python, it doesn't matter. You can just say x equals 5, and then the next line you could say x equals hippopotamus, and there's no problem there. It'll just change the type of x from a number to a string. Another thing is that white space actually matters in Python, meaning how many times you indent a line actually affects how the code is run. So that's something to keep in mind. And yeah, let's move on. What's that? Okay. This is just an example of what I was saying about static versus dynamic typing. This is in Python. You just say that these variables equal whatever. You don't need to specify what kind of variable they are, but in Java, you do need to specify that. So now we're going to do some coding. So if you're in the Discord, this collab will be in the announcements channel. If not, you can just type in that URL and hopefully it's still, I don't know if this short URL still works. I don't know if the expiration is anyone able to, it works? Awesome. Yeah, so go ahead and pull this up on your laptop. As I said, it's in Discord. It's also right down here if you just want to type it in your browser. This will be using the same application we used uh, last few weeks ago for the machine learning workshop. Okay. See if you guys can pull it up. Does everyone have it? Does anyone not have it up yet? Need a little more time. Be like 15 more seconds. You got it? Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So I'm just gonna pull over. So it might ask you to make a copy or something. I don't know exactly how it's structured, but make sure that you're in a place where you can actually edit stuff. Like you can double click. Um, are you all able to edit it or make a copy or something? Okay. Awesome. So this this is something I prepared that'll just walk you through the basics of Python. I'm not entirely sure if we'll have time to get through all of it today, but we can definitely try. So I'm kind of gonna walk you guys through it. If you feel like going ahead, you're totally welcome to do that. All the instructions are written down in the notebook. But if you want to follow along with me, that's perfect too. So let's see. So if you haven't used Colab before, uh, it's kind of a way of mixing text and code in the same place. So you can make something called a notebook, which is just more organized way of having code. And to run code, you just go to one of these, you click in it, and you press Shift Enter, and it'll run. Actually, I'm going to clear my output. Kurt, do you know how to clear output in Colab? No. Let's start over.
And someone's really
Oh, whatever. It's fine. Doesn't matter. Okay. So yeah, see in this first box here, Can you all see this on your screen? You're able to run it, shift enter.
Oh, well, you gotta click on the three dots on the right.
The what?
Three dots all the way on the yourself.
This one?
On the right side.
Oh,
Three dots, three dots.
can I do that for all? How do I do it for all of the boxes?
Just the down menu.
Oh, it does. Yeah. Okay, usually it's not supposed to do that. It's supposed to wait till you run it, but I guess that makes it easier because you don't have to run it. Anyways, that first statement is just an example of something that Python's very famous for, which is how, yeah.
If you go to edit, select all cells.
Uh, got it.
Go back, scroll all the way on to the top. With three dots, clear selected outputs. There you go.
Cool. Okay, so now I can kind of go through it one piece at a time. So something Python's very famous for, as I said, is the fact that a lot of it is just a lot more readable, a lot more coherent. So if you see on that first line, you can just write print and then in parentheses and quotes "Hello World." Unlike in I wrote up here in Java, it takes a little more. You have to do system.out.println, and in C++ it's even messier. So yeah, Python makes stuff a lot more precise by just having these shorter function names that are easier to work with. Um, Here's a little example here, just showing what you can do with math. You can add and subtract stuff. So that's pretty straightforward. And then, uh, so throughout this notebook, there's a couple spots marked to do, meaning you can just write your own code there and try to solve the task. I mean, you can work with people around you if you need to, or you can just kind of work through it. Again, that's optional. That's just a way of kind of engaging with the material, kind of get a better understanding. So yeah, you want to take a few seconds to do that. You want to write a print statement that will output your name. Yeah, make it look like you learned something useful today, huh? Okay. Uh, was everyone able to get something that worked? Were you able to run your code and see it? Okay, so just something like just like that, and you should print your name. That's simple. Now we're gonna move on real quick to dynamic typing, which is what I mentioned earlier, how variables can change their type. So this is a little demo here. I just defined these arbitrary values. I'm printing out their names, so or their values. So you see X, Y, and Z have these values that I defined up here. And then I'm printing the type of X, which is just what variable type it is. So in this case, integer, as you'd expect, because X is 5. So that means internally it's an integer. You don't have to worry about that when you're coding. Uh, but it is. And then over here, I'm changing the values of each of these variables to something of a different type and showing that there's no error. It works fine. Uh, and you notice how the class of, or the type of X changes from an integer to a string. So that's kind of just a demonstration of how dynamic typing works in Python. You can just, yeah, redefine it. It'll change the type in the background. You don't have to worry about anything. Okay. This is a little optional task here. You can just follow the instructions. You want to declare a variable to be a certain integer. So I'll get that started. You can just say like x equals 29. Sure. Then you want to redefine it to be a certain string. So you just want to write a little statement setting it to some sort of string. I'll zoom in for you guys. And then just print out x after you redefine it just to make sure it works. Oh, and remember, you don't need semicolons in Python. You probably get an error if you put one. It's not like Java and C++ where you have to. Like there's no semicolons. It's just write your code and it'll do it. All right, y'all got it? Just gonna try x equals. Should do something like this. You can pick whatever number and bring you one. Uh, do y'all know what a string is? Y'all learn that? Yeah, it's just a bunch of characters. The text, you can think of it as that. Um, is anyone here not taking like an intro to CS class? Someone like from another major? Yeah, you're mechanical engineering, right? Yeah. Okay. So I think you all got the basics. And now I'm going to move on to, hey, Adi, how's it going? Welcome. Just doing a Python workshop. The link to the collab is in the announcements channel in Discord. Uh, so this is just an example of how math works in Python. You'll find that it works actually exactly the same as it does in Java. It's just, again, no semicolons at the end of statements. So there's just a little review. You can define some variables, you can add them together, subtract, multiply, divide, square, find an exponent, and then this is something a lot of people get confused about. Modulo operator. Who here has encountered that before? Quite a few of you. You might have had a problem in CS 150 where you were asked to find if a number is odd or even using this. So that this percent symbol is called the modulus. Really what that means is that you're finding the remainder of division. So when we take 100 modulo 13, that really means that we are dividing 100 by 13 and just finding the remainder. So, uh, so in this case, it should be 9, because 13 times 7 is 91. Subtract that from 100 to get 9. Uh, this is useful for a lot of applications, like when you want to find if something is a multiple of 2. So if it's even, you can just check to see if that number x modulo 2 is 0. And if it is, that number is even, because when you cut it in half, there's nothing left over. But if there is something left over, it's not even. So that's an application that'll actually come up pretty soon. Uh, here's a little task for you guys. This one just involves doing some basic math. You want to first add I, J, and K together. That one's pretty straightforward. Next, you want to add I and J, subtract K. And third, you want to add I and J and multiply it by K. And first you have to actually define what I, J, and K equal. I think you can actually write it like, I think you might be able to do it in one line like that. Does anyone know? Yeah. So you can do this to be concise, or of course, if you want, you can spread it out onto several lines. Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah, and then of course, get rid of the 3 dots in each print and just put whatever sort of whatever sort of operation you want to put in there. Again, this should look a lot like what you've done in Java, C++, whatever you've had experience with before. This stuff's pretty standard. We're all able to figure this out. Y'all got something to work. Okay, if you ever get stuck, feel free to talk to people around you, kind of cross-reference your code. I'm going to move on to the list data structure. Who here has taken CS 210 or something like that? Data structures. Okay, a few of you. So there's a whole class dedicated to this type of thing, data structures, which is just organizing data, like a list of numbers, or if you're familiar with a dictionary or a hash map. Those are all different types of data structures. A list in Python is what's known as an abstract data type, because it is actually an implementation of either an array or a linked list, depending on how you use it. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that you don't have to worry about. All you got to know is how to define one and how to interact with one. So over here, this is a little example of how you can construct the list. You just use those square braces, and then you put in a bunch of elements of whatever type. It could be up here I have all integers. Here I have strings, and also you can mix them. Sorry, you can mix and match them. So here I actually have strings, which are A and B. I have integers, and I have a Boolean value. Uh, that's actually another thing in Python. Boolean values have a capital first letter, so capital T in true. In Java, usually just use a lowercase. Is that right? Yeah. Anyone know what Java uses? Yeah, I haven't used Java in a while. Um, yeah, so in Java, you cannot mix and match like this. You have to define a list or like an array of having a certain type of element. Either it can only have integers, it can only have floats, it can only have strings, whatever. But in Python, it does not care. You can put whatever you want in there and it'll handle it. So this little example here just defines a list and prints it out. So the output looks exactly as you would imagine. It's just printing out the items in the list. Here we can print a specific value of a list. And here's a little task here. You can make a list with 5 of your favorite foods, or your least favorite foods for that matter. Just any sort of whatever you want. You could make a list of lists. That is correct. You can embed a list inside of a list. You could say, so you can do that. I have a list that contains 2 lists, each of which contains 2 strings. Yes. Good question. I, I think it does. I just don't remember what it does when you try to do that. I don't think it'll give you an error though. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Oh, because they it's do that thing with colons like get straight indices. Yeah. Well, that's not covered in this module, but that's something important. Oh, another thing I forgot to include in here, you can append stuff, which means you can like add something to the end of a list. So if you just look at this example, you don't have to write what I'm writing. I'm just kind of showing this. Oh, what? Oh,
It's a list of lists, so you have a specific list inside of it.
yeah. I'm just so I have 2 lists and a string there. So now it's different types. You're right. But if I do want to put it in, let's say the second sublist, remember indexing an array starts at 0. So the first element is 0, the second element is 1, so on. So this would yeah, move it into that one. So you can append stuff. You can also remove stuff. Is it? Yeah. I think what's the index, right? What? Oh, it does. Yeah. So you can remove a specified value from a list. Um, so that's something usually you can do. I don't. Can you do that in a list? Interesting. If you try to append the string to the list, it adds each character individually. I didn't know it did that. That's cool. Yeah, so there's a lot of messing around you can do with lists. Yeah.
So I know Java like go out of bounds. It might give you like a array out of bounds. Like in Python, and all that.
Good question. Let's find out. Uh, let's try to print list of lists and let's try the 100th entry, which does not exist. Okay, so that gives you an error. I think -1 should give you the last item, which should be H. Should be H in this case. It is H. Okay, awesome. So we can print out the whole list too. Yeah, so if you go to the -1 index, it's like saying go to the end and go -1. You can also do something like this. You can go from the index 2 to index 4, or whatever index you want. if I just want to take the lists in here, I can just go from 0 to 2, which actually only gives me the 0 and 1 element. It means like go everything greater than or equal to 0, less than 2. So you go to colon. Yeah, lots of cool stuff you can do here. You can also do probably, yeah, you can do -2. If you do until till 2, then it does the first two. You do 2 until, should give you everything after that. What? Oh, one reverse. Make the list go reverse, opposite order. Oh, can you? Wait, no, wait. Is that what you meant? That? Oh, that's cool. That's a fun trick. You know, you can do that. Yeah, that's again another thing you can't do in Java is just you put in 4 characters and your whole list is backwards now. In Java, you'd have to set up a for loop and do that, and that would take a lot of effort. You might even need a second array at that point. Maybe you wouldn't. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that you can do in Python. You just got to learn the tricks. There's so many tricks in Python, but once you learn them, it's pretty simple. Like another thing you can do, you can say uh, equals, let's see, type is there a character type? Yeah, it could be string. Wait. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. There we go. Wait, did that? Oh, I didn't print it. Yeah, so y'all can just mess around. There's so many things you can do. Yeah, that works. So there's a lot of ways you can construct lists in Python. It's almost like if any of you take discrete math, you got it in chapter 8, set theory, like the different ways you can construct a set. But you can either list out the elements in the set like we did earlier, or you can define the rule, meaning you want to take everything in this other list if it's a string. So yeah, there's a lot of ways you can make a list. They make it really easy. Again, if you wanted to do this in Java, that's like 10 lines of code right there versus one thing that's kind of readable. It's actually list of lists, have an X string, which kind of flows weird as a sentence, but still kind of you can get what it's saying, right? It's just saying pick every X in that list that is a string. Okay. Anyways, let's move on. I know lists are a lot of fun. Definitely, I recommend you mess around with those some more. We're going to look at conditional statements, which is just the fancy word for if, else. And in Python, we also have elif. Anyone know how it's supposed to be pronounced? This elif. I I never say it out loud anyways. Let's call it elif, which is actually just a way of saying elif. Yeah. Elif. Elif is really cool, actually. Let's call it elif. So then that's if. If and elif. Yeah. So, anyways, you can start with if and then some condition, just like in Java. So if something is true, do something. Uh, and then this is actually just a shortening of else if, because the words else if don't work in Python for some reason. You got to do it that slightly shorter way. Yeah, too many letters, right? You got to save you that quarter of a second as a programmer. Time is money, right? So you can that lets you do another condition. So if I wanted to say, uh, what's a good example? If my favorite flavor of ice cream is vanilla, then print good answer. If it's strawberry, that's acceptable. Otherwise, no, not okay. So that's a little example of how that would work. We can just code this a little. You'll notice that, as I said earlier, white space matters. You have to indent here. If you don't indent, it's not going to know what you're doing. Might even give you an error actually. And if you try to indent wrong, like if I try to do a space here, it's going to give me an error because it's not indented the same as the line above it. Oh, where'd it go? Yeah. So it's really picky about that. But it comes at the cost or the reward of not having to type these squigglies, which sometimes would take extra space. You do have to do this colon though. So I guess you only save one character by doing it Python. Uh, and also you don't need to wrap parentheses around condition like you do in Java. That's another key difference. Yeah, so this example here just takes numbers x and y and says if one of them is a square of the other, so if x is y squared or y is x squared, then say yes, otherwise say no. So in this case, of course, 25 is 5 squared. So yeah, but if I do 26, no, none of these are squared of each other. How about go to 0? Yeah, 0 is the square of itself. How about -4 and 16? Let's see if it catches that. Yeah, -4 squared is 16. Yeah, so that's just a little example of an if-then that uses a little bit of math. Now we want to we're going to put to do. Okay, so we're going to make a conditional statement. So if else that prints greater than if two numbers x and y is actually greater than y, or it prints less than if x less than y, or it just prints equal to if x equals y. And keep in mind when you're checking equivalence, you've got to use a double equal sign, just like in Java. So yeah, let's see if you guys check and work on that. I got it started for you. Just of course get rid of these dots first.
Yeah, I did. You're right.
I should put more on the list, I think. Does anyone need help, or you guys got it? You just got to work on it. We need some more time to finish this. Anyone, by show of hands? Yeah, no. Did anyone here use Python before? Okay, good. Anyone ever wanted to learn Python? Yeah. I'm gonna move on unless anyone needs more time. No, okay, moving on. Uh, Actually, I'll just provide a solution. So just want to kind of do the opposite of what we did before. X less than Y. Then, okay, cool. Did everyone get something like that? Okay. Now we're going to be working with an if then that involves a list. So we have a list of fruits. We have got an orange, a cranberry, and an apple. And we are trying to figure out, is there an apple in there? Is there a banana? Or is there both or neither? And I forgot to write in this. I'll give you guys a little hint for this if you don't know. You can say this will be a Boolean statement that is true if apple is in fruits. So you can kind of do like if, and then you can write the rest of your code. So that's a little trick. And again, in Java, takes several lines to do that. You gotta probably iterate through an array and see if the value is there. Or they might have a library to do that for you. But again, in Python, so much easier. You're gonna read it is just get apple and fruits. It's not the most grammatically correct statement, but it's still you get what they're trying to say, right?
I would say yes, but maybe it's
I'm gonna work through this one real quick. Let's see. I want to see it's both. Okay. So that's kind of an example of how you do that. Um, do not make the mistake of writing if apple and banana in fruits. Did anyone do that? No? Okay. Oh, someone did. Okay. If you do that, then it gets confused because the word and is a logical operator. It works on Boolean values, true or false. So this right here is a true or false statement. Either apple is in fruits or it's not. This is also true or false. And says go on only if both of these are true. Um, but if you write apple and banana in fruits, what's going on here is it's evaluating apple as a Boolean and then banana in fruits, which is a valid Boolean, but this is not. And generally in Python, any non-zero value gets interpreted as true if you ask it to uh, evaluate it as a Boolean. So in a lot of languages, you get an error here because you're trying to basically figure out if apple is true or false. But of course, that doesn't make any sense. Apple cannot be true or false. But as I said, in Python, a string like that is just going to go to true because anything that's non-zero, just in the compiler, uh, results in true. So if you write it like this, you will not get an error. It should actually still work, and in many cases, it'll give you the right answer. It's just it won't always give you the right answer because it's not actually doing what you want it to. What's that? Yeah, that's true. You can do uh yeah, this will be false and this will be true. So if one and zero are equivalent to true and false respectively,
is it what's how
maybe. I think JavaScript does. Java does. I would assume so. Just a little lower level in Python. Uh, okay. Does everyone understand conditional so far? If thens? I mean, I'm sure we've all seen it in Java before. Uh, okay. So just slightly different syntax. Now we're going to move on to iteration, which is for loops. There's also while loops, but given that we are limited on time, I didn't want to like cram that all in there. That's a whole different topic. So first of all, in Java, as I wrote up here, when you want a for loop, you have to make an iterator variable, you an integer. You want to specify some condition that's met, after which the loop will terminate. And then you want to do something to update that iterator. So basically, you just want to keep increasing I until you've gone beyond the bounds of what you want to do. This is kind of clunky because if you want to do something 10 times, you got to write all these words. Uh, Also, if you want to iterate through an array in Java, you have to iterate through an integer first and then find the array value at that index, which is, again, it's harder to read, takes more code. It's kind of silly. However, in Python, usually you iterate over some sort of thing called an iterable, which is just any type of class that you can iterate through. It can be a list, a dictionary. There's actually very wide range of iterable classes in Python. They're all basically just lists. But this one is very famous in Python. It's called range. It just basically generates a list containing all the numbers between two values every day. Um, so the range of n, let's say n is 10, this actually just gives you a list of every integer from 0 to 9. So if you say for I in range 10, you're telling this loop to run 10 times, first with the number 0 as its iterator, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 9. So kind of an example of that down here. So you can test this example here to print everything from 0 to 9. So that's how you do that. If you want everything from 16 to 25, you got to be a little more creative. You'll notice that the range of this is still 10, like you want to spread over 10, but you need to be shifted to start at 16. So you just add 16 and you get everything from 16 to 25. Sweet. If you want every multiple of 10 from 0 to 50, if you want, oh, you can. I do that.
So you use 16 or
You can do that. Yeah, I guess that's a probably better way to do that. Yeah, you can do that too. Cool. I didn't know that. So if anyone didn't see that, you can just place that and specify the range here. Um, if you want every multiple of 10 from 0 to 50, then you can just take every number from 0 to 5 and multiply it by 10, right? So that's, oh, yeah, that's this example. If you want the squares of the first 5 non-zero integers, you can just take each number from 0 to 4, add 1 to make it non-zero, so you have numbers from 1 to 5, square them. That's simple. And then also, we can iterate, as I said, through various types of lists, not just through the range function. So, for example, if you have a list of fruits, you can just iterate through it and print them all one at a time. You can also do a bunch of other stuff here. You don't have to print it. You could do some weird magic, like I don't know, to figure out how many letters are in that character or that word and then spit that out. Or you could put that on a list of what someone likes for fruits. I don't know. You could do anything in there. It's just the logic. This allows you to easily iterate through a list. Again, it only takes 2 lines. I mean, really 1 line to do the iteration. While in Java, it might take 5 or 6. So, and again, it's more readable just for fruits. You're saying for each individual fruit in the list fruits, you just do something. So, does that make sense so far? One, for loops. Y'all remember that from Java? Okay. Yeah. So another issue is that sometimes we want to keep track of how many iterations have happened, even when we're iterating through a list. So if you want to have your programmer be aware of which number of fruit you're looking at, there are a few ways to do that. You can do it the naive way, which means the way you shouldn't do, where you set some I to be 0, then kind of like in a Java loop, after each iteration, you just increment that by 1. That is not recommended just because it's funky. It takes 4 lines of code when you can do it in 2 using enumerate, which is a function that basically spits out an adjusted version of fruits that is basically like key value pairs. So it gives you pairs of the index and then the actual thing in the list, the fruit. So if you run this, it is aware of what the index is just by running enumerate around the list. Now, by having I comma fruit, I tracks the index, which is how many iterations you've gone through, and that fruit is just the fruit. So that's another useful feature just to save you a couple lines of code. Now we're going to get into functions, which, as I said earlier, they're a lot like methods in Java, except they're not really bound to a class or object. You can just write them wherever, right in your code. So let's see. If you define a basic function, this one's just called f. Usually they have longer names. F is not very descriptive. But I'm just using that because it's a common mathematical function name. So if you define f of x, you always start with def, saying define. And then you just make the name of the variable or the function. And then in parentheses, you put the variables or the arguments that you want to be involved. You could keep that blank if you don't want to have any arguments, but in this case, we need some x. But also x comma y comma z, whatever you need. And then this function just squares a number. It's a pretty simple function. So we're printing, first of all, this the return statement here just sends some piece of data back to the thread that calls it. So what that means is if you print f of 5, if you're running f of 5, it's squaring x, so it takes 5, squares it, returns it, and puts it back where that function is. So when you run a function, it's kind of like you take the result and you replace it. So exactly just then you print 25. So you should get these prints 25, 9, and 3, 6, 2, 1. Yeah. So we look at a different type of function. This one has two arguments. There's an x and y. You just want to multiply them together. Again, that's something really simple to do. You just put the little asterisk between them. And then, again, you can run it, just verify it all worked. Perfect. Now we can find the sum of x and y and multiply that by z. So that's like x plus y in parentheses, then times z. Um, you can, this is kind of spelling it out line by line. Realistically, you could do it more concisely. You could just do return that. But this kind of just goes step by step, showing what you're doing. So either way works. Although this will not actually run because after the return statement, the function is done, nothing else gets run. So, but if I get rid of these by making them comments, it should still work. Yeah. So yeah, that's two ways to write that kind of function. Yeah. Question? Any other questions? I go too fast for you guys. You guys got it. Cool. Now, this is a little task for you guys. We're just gonna have a function that prints whether a number x is odd or even. Typically, we use integers in there, so don't worry about decimals. Uh, yeah, and then we're just gonna test that out. So, as I mentioned earlier, something is even if uh, the x modulo 2 equals 0. So that's kind of your hint for working on this. Other than that, it should be pretty straightforward.
All the.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, every
It just wasn't on the,
what was it?
like, it was. Violence.
This here?
Down there's this different functions.
Oh, yeah, yeah. These are not in the function, so they don't need to be indented. Anything that's in the function has to be indented, but anything not in the function, that's how Python knows when your function stops. Because in Java, you have these curly braces to start and end stuff. So that's why in Python the it's so important because this is different from this. So this line, the first one will run whenever the function is called, and this one will run exactly once, regardless of whether the function is called. Yeah, question?
Why don't you don't have to like say you know say it's like
Yeah, that's correct. In Python, you never specify data types. Yeah.
you can't write yeah. Between the ending parentheses and colon, we do dash variable, the arrow, right arrow, and then the type.
Oh,
That's when I find it to like it will always return it. It's one of the visibility thing.
cool.
You can sort of the non
Yeah, that's fair. I didn't know you could do that, but yeah, that's
variable backwards.
okay, cool. So yeah, that can make your code more readable. Does it actually lock it to do that?
No. So it's a required.
Yeah. Well, that's fair. Does everyone figure it out? Just gonna walk you guys through it. Oh, yeah,
I wanted to ask, you could explain in that right now, but like, you can use, this behind it.
yeah. You mean like combining lists or like adding stuff to the end?
Is replacing arithmetic.
Yeah, definitely. We can work on that. I guess after we finish, we're almost done here, but then I'll ask kind of what you guys want to focus on in the future if we do this again. Anyways, yeah, that's a good question though. Um, oh, what? Why did it run so many times?
Yeah, yeah.
What? Oh, you're right. You're right. Sorry, this is not should not be print. I should be returning it because I want to print it later. Yeah, there we go. 5 is odd. Yeah. 28 is even. 46 is even. Perfect. So test work. Make sense? Yeah, I had it written with just print statements before. That's bad because then I'm still telling it to print the result, but I never told it the result. I never returned anything. So yeah, that's why I got confused. Um, Nesting is not really a topic on its own. It's more just a practice that happens in programming. It's just whenever you have stuff that's written inside of other things. So like what we did up here is actually an example of nesting because you have a conditional inside of the function. Yeah.
So, so like returning, you just like put a print function into it.
Yeah,
Actual function.
exactly. Yeah. So if you wanted to do this a different way, you could do, so you could have the function defined as I did earlier, and then you can just do like this. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. So you can do that as well. You can have the function actually call the print method itself, in which case it'll work the same. Just make sure you don't try to print the result of the function, just run the function. Yeah, that's totally fine. Yeah, nesting is just when you have any sort of loops, functions, conditionals that are kind of nested into each other like this. So you see how there's like a staircase structure where the indenting goes further. Uh, so this example prints every integer less than 8. So it's just exactly what we did earlier with the for loops, except we put it into function. Yeah. Do what? Problem. I wonder. Nope. Wonder if you can do that. Yeah, that works. That's a hacking method to do it. Do you know, is there a better method?
Yeah, there was a keyword called and
Oh, yeah, yeah. I've seen that. Like that? No.
I think it's
What's that? Oh, that worked.
you know,
Okay. Yeah. What I did here is, yeah, so this is actually a special character. The backslash B does the backspace. So I was just telling it every time you print something, undo the new line that was just printed. So that's kind of the hacky way of doing it. But yeah, Kurt has a better method. Yeah, I have seen this before. You just tell it what the end is. Normally, by default, it's a new line. But if you don't specify anything, they'll be right after each other. Or you can do, let's say, a comma. Now they're all separated by commas, right? So you can do whatever you want. Or you could do banana. There you go. Lots of bananas. Going bananas today. Okay. Now a little test for you guys. Um, oh, this one's big. This one you don't have to write any code for. It's an example of how you can do this stuff. So I was really craving fruit. A lot of fruit examples. Got some apples, honeydew, kiwi. Gotta have Android if you're gonna have Apple, right? Yeah, that's just an example there. And yeah, you guys can. We're at 5 o'clock now, so you guys can feel free to work on this on your own. I'll be here for about half an hour if you guys have questions or if you guys want to work on like writing some little code. There's some space for you to do that. So whatever you guys want to do. Before you guys leave, I just want to ask. Uh, do you guys want to see more Python stuff in the future, like building on top, more stuff with like lists, maybe machine learning? We'll work up to that point. Okay, got it. So expect to see more of that. Yeah, if you have any suggestions, just drop them in the Discord. So we guys want to learn about. We'll, we'll we'll do that. So yeah, thank you all for coming. Hope you guys were able to learn something. And yeah, see you guys next week. Or as I said, you can